In a world obsessed with shortcuts, where success is sold in sound bites and happiness comes in notifications, one book stands like a timeless compass, pointing us back to what truly matters. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People isn't just a self-help book. It's a manual for living, a guide for anyone who wants to build a life that lasts beyond trends and titles. When Stephen R. Covey first published this book in 1989, he didn't just teach habits. He revealed principles, timeless laws of human effectiveness that don't bend to circumstance or fashion. Decades later, his message feels even more urgent. Because in a distracted age, effectiveness is no longer about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. Covey believed that real change begins from the inside out. Not by manipulating others, but by transforming ourselves, our mindset, our choices, our vision. He broke the journey into 7 habits, 7 powerful shifts that move us from dependence to independence, and finally to interdependence, where true leadership and fulfillment begin. Each habit is a step, a bridge from who we are to who we're capable of becoming. From taking responsibility for our lives, to envisioning our future, to prioritizing what truly counts. From learning to listen before we speak, to working with others instead of against them, and finally, to renewing the body, mind, and soul. This book has changed millions of lives, from world leaders to entrepreneurs, teachers, and families. But its power lies not in the number of readers. It lies in its truth, that effectiveness isn't luck, it's choice. It's habit. It's principle. So in this Page-Wise series, we'll explore each of these 7 habits through cinematic storytelling, not as rules, but as reflections of a life lived with purpose, clarity, and balance. Because success isn't about how fast you climb, it's about whether your ladder is leaning against the right wall. And the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People will help you find that wall, and climb it with meaning. Part 1. Paradigms and Principles of Effectiveness. Every life is shaped by a lens, the way we see the world before we even touch it. Stephen Covey begins his timeless masterpiece here, not with action, but with awareness. Because before you can change your life, you must first change how you see it. He calls it a paradigm, the mental map that guides our perceptions, our behaviors, our choices. Most people live their entire lives by maps they never drew, by beliefs they never questioned. They chase success as defined by others, by titles, money, approval, and then wonder why the summit feels empty. Covey's message cuts through that fog. If the map is wrong, no amount of speed will get you to the right destination. He invites us to step back and look at the invisible patterns that govern our daily lives. Are they built on quick fixes, on image, on external validation? Or are they grounded in principles, timeless truths that have guided humanity long before there were books, schools, or systems of success? For Covey, principles are natural laws, as real as gravity. Honesty, integrity, responsibility, respect, these aren't inventions. They are discoveries. They don't depend on circumstance or opinion, they simply are. And the closer your life aligns with these principles, the stronger, calmer, and more effective you become. But this isn't easy work. Because our culture worships personality over character, image over integrity, efficiency over empathy. We live in a world of quick wins, shortcuts, and hacks. Yet Covey reminds us that character, not charm, is the foundation of effectiveness. The personality ethic can make you look successful, but only the character ethic can make you become successful. To illustrate this, Covey tells stories, simple, human, unforgettable. Like the man on the subway, frustrated by a father whose children were running wild. The father sat quietly, lost in thought. When the man finally confronted him, the father looked up and said, "I'm sorry, we just came from a hospital. Their mother died an hour ago." In an instant, judgment turned to compassion. The situation didn't change, the paradigm did. That shift is what Covey calls an inside-out approach, the foundation for all 7 habits. Real change begins within. You cannot change your circumstances until you change your perceptions. You cannot fix relationships, careers, or habits until you take responsibility for your responses. Between what happens to you and how you react, there is always a space, and in that space lies your freedom, your power, your growth. This is where effectiveness begins. Not in tools or techniques, but in principles and perspective. It's the difference between trimming the leaves and nurturing the roots. You can only sustain growth when your actions align with eternal truths, the principles that never age: fairness, honesty, contribution, service, growth, and renewal. Covey draws a line between two kinds of victories: private victory and public victory. The private victory is mastery of self, your character, discipline, and purpose. The public victory is mastery with others, collaboration, trust, and influence. You cannot achieve one without the other. Just as a tree cannot share shade without first taking root, no person can lead or connect effectively without first being whole within. This is why the 7 habits are built in sequence. The first 3, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first, are about independence, taking control of your life. The next 3, think win-win, seek first to understand, and synergize, are about interdependence, building relationships and working in harmony with others. And the final habit, sharpen the saw, is about renewal, maintaining balance and growth across body, mind, heart, and spirit. But all of it begins with a paradigm, the lens through which you see yourself and the world. If your map is reactive, you live by blame and circumstance. If your map is proactive, you live by choice and principle. Covey challenges us to stop living as victims of our environment and start living as creators of our response. To pause before reacting, to see people not as obstacles but as souls, to base decisions not on moods but on values. That, he says, is the essence of leadership, not managing others, but managing yourself. As this first section closes, Covey leaves us with a quiet, powerful truth. If you want to make small changes, focus on your behavior. If you want to make big changes, focus on your paradigm. The most effective people in the world, from leaders to parents to creators, have one thing in common: they live from the inside out. They are guided not by what's popular, but by what's principled. And that's the journey this book invites you on, to rebuild your life not on personality, but on purpose, not on imitation, but on integrity, not on reaction, but on reflection. Because true effectiveness doesn't begin when the world changes around you. It begins the moment you decide to change within. Habit 1. Be proactive. Principles of personal vision. Every story of greatness begins with a single realization, that you are not a product of your circumstances, but a product of your choices. This is where Stephen Covey begins the first habit: be proactive. It sounds simple, even ordinary. But within it lies the most powerful truth of human existence. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is always a space. And in that space lies your freedom, your growth, and your destiny. Most people live their lives like leaves in the wind, moved by circumstance, emotion, or the opinions of others. They wait for conditions to change before they change themselves. They say things like, if only my boss were different, if only my past wasn't so hard, if only I had more time, more luck, more help. But that's the language of the reactive. Covey calls it the victim vocabulary, a quiet surrender of power disguised as logic. The proactive person speaks differently. They say, I am responsible. I choose. I decide. They understand that their life is not written by the world, but by their responses to it. That's the foundation of personal vision, to see yourself not as an effect of the environment, but as a cause within it. Covey explains that this shift begins with a single idea: responsibility, the ability to choose your response. You cannot always control the weather, the market, or the actions of others. But you can control yourself, your attitude, your effort, your focus. That small circle of control, he says, is where true power lives. He calls it the circle of influence. Picture 2 circles in your mind. The outer one is your circle of concern, all the things you care about but cannot directly control: politics, the economy, other people's opinions. The inner circle is your circle of influence, the things you can actually affect: your habits, your mindset, your work, your reactions. Reactive people waste their energy on the outer circle, complaining and blaming. Proactive people invest their energy in the inner circle, taking small, consistent actions that expand their influence over time. It's like tending a garden. You can't control the rain or the wind, but you can plant, water, and nurture what grows within your reach. And as your garden flourishes, so does your influence. Covey shares story after story of how this principle transforms lives. Like Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps. Stripped of everything, his family, his freedom, his dignity, Frankl realized there was still one thing the guards could never take away: his power to choose his attitude. He could not control what they did to him, but he could decide what it meant. Everything can be taken from a man, Frankl wrote, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That, Covey says, is the heart of proactivity, the power to create meaning, even in suffering. To live by values, not moods. To act on principles, not impulses. But being proactive doesn't mean being aggressive or controlling. It means taking initiative, choosing to be the author of your own script, not the actor in someone else's play. When you stop waiting for permission to live your life, you reclaim your power. Covey often reminds us, your life doesn't just happen, you design it. The question is not whether you will be acted upon, but whether you will act. He contrasts two types of language. Reactive language says, "There's nothing I can do." Proactive language says, "Let's find a way." Reactive language says, "That's just the way I am." Proactive language says, "I can choose a better way to be." The words you speak shape your mindset, and your mindset shapes your future. Covey challenges us to perform a quiet experiment. For a single day, listen to your own language, the way you speak about problems, people, and possibilities. You'll begin to notice how often we give our power away through words of limitation. The goal is not to deny difficulty but to reclaim choice, to speak as creators, not victims. Then he takes it further. Being proactive isn't just about reacting differently to life, it's about creating life. It's about initiating the changes you want to see, about moving first. Don't wait for opportunity to arrive, prepare for it. Don't wait for inspiration, act your way into feeling. Covey also emphasizes the quiet strength of keeping commitments, especially the ones you make to yourself. Every time you honor a promise, even a small one, you build internal integrity, a confidence that you can rely on yourself. That's the essence of self-leadership. The moment you keep your word to yourself, you stop living by impulse and start living by intention. He says, proactivity is not a once-and-done decision, it's a habit of awareness. Every day, you choose whether to react or to create, whether to complain or to change, whether to be ruled by emotion or guided by principle. This habit becomes the foundation for all the others. Because until you take ownership of your life, no other habit can take root. You can't begin with the end in mind if you don't believe you can shape the ending. You can't put first things first if you think the world decides your priorities. So habit one is not about controlling the world, it's about mastering yourself. It's about choosing calm when others choose chaos, discipline when others choose distraction, and meaning when others choose excuses. In a world that constantly pushes you to react, to every message, every crisis, every emotion, Covey's words echo like a reminder from the quiet part of your soul. You are the creative force of your life. You can choose your response. You can write your story. Because the moment you stop saying "if only" and start saying "I will," that's the moment your life begins to change. From reaction to creation. From circumstance to vision. From being acted upon to being alive. Habit 2. Begin with the end in mind. Principles of personal leadership. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're walking into a quiet chapel. Soft music hums in the background. Friends and family fill the seats, faces calm but reflective. You walk slowly down the aisle and realize you're at your own funeral. People step forward, one by one, to speak about your life. What would you want them to say? That image, Covey says, is not meant to darken your thoughts, it's meant to clarify them. Because habit 2, begin with the end in mind, is not about death. It's about direction. It's about designing your life so that when it ends, it mattered. Too many people climb the ladder of success only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. They achieve goals, earn titles, gain wealth, but somewhere along the way, they forget why they started. Covey's message is both simple and seismic. All things are created twice. Once in the mind, and then in reality. The physical creation always follows the mental one. If you don't consciously design the blueprint for your life, you'll live by someone else's design. Society, advertisements, even well-meaning parents and friends will write the script for you. And without realizing it, you'll act it out, chasing definitions of success that leave you restless and unfinished. To begin with the end in mind means to become the author of your own story. To define success before the world defines it for you. It's about leadership, not of others, but of self. Management is about doing things right. Leadership is about doing the right things. Covey invites you to picture your life as a compass, not a clock. The clock is full of urgency, schedules, deadlines, routines. But the compass points to meaning, to purpose, to principles that don't shift with time. When you live by a compass, your direction becomes clear, even when the path isn't. He asks us to create a personal mission statement, a written declaration of what matters most, a constitution for your life. It's not a list of goals, it's a vision of values. It answers questions like, who am I? What do I stand for? What legacy do I want to leave? For example, a mission might read, I want to live with integrity, to nurture my family with love, to inspire others through my work, and to grow daily in wisdom and compassion. It's not poetic fluff. It's a framework, a foundation that guides decisions, priorities, and direction when life gets chaotic. Because when your mission is clear, choices become easier. You stop saying yes to everything that screams for your attention and start saying yes only to what aligns with your purpose. Covey emphasizes that everyone lives by a center, something that anchors their decisions. For some, it's work. For others, money, pleasure, possessions, family, or approval. But every one of these centers can shift or collapse. If your identity depends on the economy, what happens when it crashes? If it depends on another person, what happens when they change or leave? That's why Covey calls us to build our lives on principle-centered living. Principles don't change. Honesty, integrity, courage, love, these are constants. When you live from that center, you become stable in an unstable world. He illustrates this with a story about climbing a mountain. Imagine spending years scaling icy cliffs, enduring storms, fighting exhaustion, only to reach the top and realize you climbed the wrong peak. All that effort, but in the wrong direction. Habit 2 ensures that your climb, your life, is aimed at the summit that actually matters to you. Covey also draws from the concept of visualization. High performers, athletes, leaders, they all imagine the outcome before it happens. They see it vividly, feel it emotionally, and act as if it's already real. When you begin with the end in mind, you do the same with your life. You visualize the kind of person you want to be, the impact you want to leave, and you align today's choices with that future vision. He writes, if you carefully consider what you want to be said of you at the end of your life, you will find your definition of success. That reflection shapes not just your career or family, but your daily behavior, the tone of your conversations, the patience you show, the promises you keep. There's power in that clarity. Because once you know the end, you begin living intentionally instead of accidentally. You design your days instead of reacting to them. You lead your life instead of managing your distractions. Covey warns that without this habit, it's easy to drift, to fill your calendar with busyness and your heart with noise. But direction doesn't come from movement, it comes from meaning. To begin with the end in mind is to ask every day, is what I'm doing right now leading me where I want to go? He urges us to think of our lives as a project. No architect starts construction without a blueprint. No composer writes music without hearing it first in the mind. Yet so many people live without ever defining what they want the finished life to sound like. Your mission statement becomes your design. It doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be personal. You can refine it as you grow, but once written, it becomes a compass to return to when you're lost. It reminds you that success without significance is failure, and achievement without purpose is emptiness. In the quiet of reflection, Covey's words resonate like a promise. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So begin today, with the end in mind. See the person you want to be. Feel the peace of a life aligned with principles, not pressure. Hear the story people will one day tell about you, not as a fantasy, but as a roadmap. Because when you live with vision, every step becomes intentional. Every day becomes meaningful. And one day when you stand at the summit of your own life, you'll know you climbed the right mountain. Habit 3. Put first things first. Principles of personal management. If habit 1 is about choice, realizing you are the creator of your life, and habit 2 is about vision, knowing what you want that life to look like, then habit 3 is where philosophy becomes action. It's about discipline, the courage to do what truly matters when the world pulls you in every other direction. Stephen Covey calls it put first things first. And it's not just a rule of productivity, it's a principle of priority. Imagine your life as a jar. On the table beside it are rocks, pebbles, and sand. The rocks represent the big things: your health, your relationships, your dreams, your purpose. The pebbles are smaller responsibilities: your job, your chores, your obligations. And the sand? The endless small stuff: emails, errands, distractions, the 1,000 things that scream urgent but rarely matter. Now picture what happens if you pour in the sand first. The jar fills quickly, leaving no room for the rocks. That's how most people live: busy, reactive, endlessly chasing the immediate while sacrificing the important. But when you put the big rocks first, something magical happens. You drop them in, then the pebbles, and finally the sand, and everything fits. The secret wasn't more space. It was better order. Covey says that's the essence of habit 3, organizing your life around what matters most. Managing not your time, but yourself. He introduces a powerful tool called the time management matrix. Picture 4 quadrants. Keycap 1 quadrant I, urgent and important, crises, deadlines, emergencies. Keycap 2 quadrant 2, not urgent but important, planning, relationships, health, personal growth, prevention. Keycap 3 quadrant 3, urgent but not important, interruptions, unnecessary meetings, trivial requests. Keycap 4 quadrant 4, not urgent and not important, time wasters, distractions, mindless scrolling. Most people, Covey says, live trapped in quadrants I and 3, reacting to what's loudest, not what's most meaningful. They live in constant urgency, always busy, rarely fulfilled. But truly effective people operate in quadrant 2, where things are important but not urgent. This is the quadrant of deep work, reflection, relationships, learning, and health. The work that prevents problems before they happen. The moments that build peace instead of pressure. Covey calls this personal management, aligning daily action with the personal mission you defined in habit 2. It means saying no not to be rebellious, but to protect your yes for what matters. Because every time you say yes to something small, you might be saying no to something great. He tells a story of a seminar where he fills a jar with rocks and then pours in gravel, sand, and water. When it's full, he asks the audience, "What's the lesson?" Someone says, "There's always room for more." Covey smiles and shakes his head. "No," he says, "the lesson is, if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all." That's the challenge. In a world where everything feels urgent, can you slow down enough to focus on what's important? Covey describes a deeper shift, moving from time management to self-management. Because you can't manage time, it flows regardless. What you can manage are your priorities, your energy, your commitments. The question becomes, am I leading my life by values or by pressures? He reminds us that effective people aren't driven by schedules, they're guided by principles. Their calendar reflects their compass. To live this way requires courage, the courage to disappoint the unimportant, to delegate the trivial, to pause when the world demands you rush. It means living intentionally, not reactively. Covey also warns about the seductive nature of quadrant 3, the illusion of urgency. It feels productive to respond to messages, attend meetings, or handle small tasks. But without purpose, these actions become sand, endlessly pouring into the jar of your day until the rocks are buried. To break this cycle, he recommends 3 simple practices. 1. Plan weekly, act daily. Each week, reconnect with your mission, your roles, your goals, your values. Then schedule around those priorities, not around noise. 2. Say no gracefully. Every no is a yes to something higher. You protect your future by having the courage to decline distractions. 3. Balance renewal. Don't confuse busyness with growth. Rest, reflection, and self-care are not luxuries. They're quadrant 2 investments that sustain effectiveness. Covey also introduces the idea of integrity in the moment of choice. Every day brings decisions that test your priorities. Do you check one more email or spend time with your family? Do you scroll or write? Do you react or create? Each choice, though small, defines the architecture of your life. When you consistently choose what matters most, you build trust with yourself and others. You become dependable, not because you're fast, but because you're aligned. Habit 3, then, is the bridge between vision and reality. Habit 2 gives you the what and why. Habit 3 gives you the how. It's where dreams leave the page and enter the world through discipline and focus. Covey writes, "The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." It's a simple line, but it captures the heart of a profound life. Because if you don't choose your priorities, someone else will. If you don't manage your time, the world will manage it for you, and not in your favor. So Covey calls us to step back from the noise and ask, what are my big rocks? What truly deserves my time, my energy, my presence? And then, to build every day around those answers. Because in the end, effectiveness is not about how much you do. It's about what you choose to do, and who you choose to become in the process. When you put first things first, your days stop feeling like races. They begin to feel like progress. You move from reaction to creation, from chaos to clarity, from the shallow rush of activity to the deep rhythm of purpose. And that's where true leadership begins, not in managing others, but in mastering yourself. Habit 4. Think win-win. Principles of interpersonal leadership. Imagine a world where every interaction is a contest, every meeting a negotiation, every relationship a quiet tug-of-war. For many people, that's not imagination, it's reality. We live in a culture trained to compete, to win, to measure worth by comparison. But Stephen Covey invites us to a higher plane, one where leadership isn't about victory over others, but victory with others. This is the essence of Habit 4. Think win-win. Covey begins with a truth that reshapes every human connection. Life is not a zero-sum game. There is more than enough success, recognition, and opportunity to go around. The only scarcity that exists is the one created by fear, the fear that if someone else wins, we must lose. He calls that mindset the scarcity mentality, the belief that life is a pie with limited slices. People who live this way guard their peace anxiously. They compare, they envy, they withhold. Their success feels fragile because it depends on others staying below them. The opposite is the abundance mentality, the belief that the pie can grow, that collaboration multiplies value, that true success is shared. Those who think abundantly celebrate others' victories because they don't diminish their own. They build trust instead of walls, and influence instead of insecurity. To think win-win is to approach every interaction with the intention of mutual benefit, to seek agreements and relationships that honor both courage and consideration. It's not a soft compromise, nor a manipulative tactic. It's a principle of genuine human respect. Covey explains that there are 6 paradigms of human interaction. Keycap 1 win-win, everyone benefits. Keycap 2 win-lose, I win, you lose. Keycap 3 lose-win, I lose to keep the peace. Keycap 4 lose-lose, if I can't win, neither can you. Keycap 5 win, I only care about myself. Keycap 6 win-win or no deal, if mutual benefit isn't possible, we part respectfully. Most relationships, Covey observes, oscillate between win-lose and lose-win. One side dominates, the other yields, until resentment brews. The result? Broken trust, quiet frustration, and shallow cooperation. Win-win, however, requires maturity, the balance of courage to express your needs and consideration to value others. He frames it simply, win-win equals character plus relationships plus agreements. It begins with character. You can't practice win-win from a place of insecurity. You must anchor yourself in 3 essential traits. Integrity, staying true to your values. Maturity, balancing empathy with assertiveness. Abundance mentality, believing there's enough for everyone. From that foundation grows relationship trust. Trust isn't built in grand gestures but in consistency, keeping promises, listening sincerely, acting fairly. Once trust exists, agreements become powerful. People no longer need supervision, they need shared understanding, clear expectations of desired results, resources, accountability, and standards. Covey illustrates this with leaders who manage through trust instead of control. When people feel respected, they rise to that respect. When they feel mistrusted, they shrink to suspicion. Win-win leadership liberates potential because it treats people not as tools, but as partners. He tells a story of negotiating with one of his sons. The boy had chores and responsibilities, but instead of dictating rules, Covey invited him to help design the agreement. Together they discussed goals, standards, and consequences. The result wasn't compliance, it was ownership. The boy didn't just obey, he chose to contribute. That's win-win in motion. Covey warns, however, that win-win cannot exist without courage. People often confuse kindness with weakness, as if seeking mutual good means letting others walk over you. But win-win is the intersection of two strong wills, one that values self and one that values others. It says, I won't win at your expense, but I won't lose myself for your comfort either. This balance is what Covey calls the emotional bank account, the trust reservoir in every relationship. Each act of kindness, honesty, or respect is a deposit. Each betrayal, lie, or neglect is a withdrawal. When the account is rich, disagreements don't destroy connection, they refine it. But when it's empty, even small issues cause breakdown. Thinking win-win is about making consistent deposits of goodwill so that cooperation becomes natural, not negotiated. In business, this principle transforms organizations. Leaders who operate with win-win thinking replace competition with collaboration. Teams stop hoarding credit and start multiplying results. Because when the reward system shifts from me to we, creativity flourishes. Covey writes, win-win is not a technique, it's a total paradigm of human interaction. It's a philosophy of abundance, a quiet power that says the best relationships, deals, and partnerships are built not on dominance, but on shared victory. He also cautions, win-win is not always possible. Sometimes values clash or goals diverge. In such cases, he suggests win-win or no deal. Rather than forcing a compromise that leaves both parties resentful, it's better to walk away with respect intact. This approach builds long-term credibility. People trust you because they know you'll never exploit them for short-term gain. Ultimately, Habit 4 is the turning point in the journey from independence to interdependence. The first 3 habits make you strong. The next 3 make you connected. Win-win is the bridge between the private victory of self-mastery and the public victory of shared success. Covey reminds us, in the long run, if it isn't a win for both, it will soon become a lose for both. To live this way requires practice, daily moments of awareness where you ask, am I competing or cooperating? Am I listening to understand or to reply? Am I seeking shared benefit or personal validation? Because every relationship, at home, at work, in life, is a chance to build abundance instead of scarcity. When you start thinking win-win, conversations change. Conflicts soften. Collaboration deepens. You begin to see people not as obstacles to your goals, but as partners in purpose. And that's when leadership transcends authority. It becomes influence. Not the loud kind that commands, but the quiet kind that inspires. Because true success, as Covey teaches, is never a solitary victory. It's the moment when your win helps others win too. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Principles of empathic communication. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. That single sentence, Stephen Covey says, is the root of nearly every misunderstanding, every conflict, every relationship that drifts into distance. We hear, but we don't listen. We interpret, judge, advise, all before the other person has even finished their sentence. In a world addicted to speaking, listening has become a lost art. Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, is about rediscovering that art. It's about learning to listen, not with the ears, but with the heart. Covey begins with a powerful truth. Communication is the most important skill in life. We spend years learning to read, write, and speak, but almost no time learning to listen. Yet listening is the gateway to influence, connection, and peace. He tells the story of a father who came to him, frustrated with his teenage son. "I can't get through to him," the father said. "You don't understand him," Covey replied. "I don't need to understand him. He needs to understand me," the father snapped. Covey smiled gently. "Then that's why you can't get through to him." The father's frustration is universal. We often try to fix, persuade, or control before we understand. But true influence, the kind that changes hearts, begins with empathy. Empathic listening, Covey explains, is different from active listening. It's not about parroting back words or nodding at the right time. It's about seeing the world as the other person sees it, feeling what they feel without judgment or defense. It requires suspending your own agenda long enough to enter theirs. When people feel heard, they no longer resist. They open. They trust. And that trust becomes the foundation of influence. Covey compares most conversations to a doctor who prescribes before diagnosing. Imagine going to a physician who listens for 5 seconds, interrupts, and says, "I know exactly what you need." You'd walk out. Yet that's how we treat emotional pain. We prescribe solutions before we understand the problem. He breaks down the levels of listening. Ignoring, not really listening at all. Pretending, giving mechanical ahas and nods. Selective listening, hearing only what interests us. Attentive listening, focusing on words, but not emotions. Empathic listening, listening with the intent to truly understand. Only the last one builds connection. Because empathic listening isn't about technique, it's about sincerity. It means giving someone the rarest gift in the modern world, your full presence. Covey explains that when you listen deeply, people start revealing things even they didn't know they felt. Your understanding becomes a mirror that helps them see themselves more clearly. That's not manipulation, it's compassion in action. He shares another story, a simple conversation with one of his sons. The boy was struggling, feeling misunderstood at school. Instead of lecturing or advising, Covey just listened. Slowly, the boy began to articulate his fears, his anger, his confusion. By the end, Covey didn't have to give advice. The boy found his own solution, because being understood gave him the courage to think clearly again. That's the magic of empathy. It heals without instruction. But habit 5 doesn't stop there. Once you've understood, the second half of the habit begins, then to be understood. Communication is a two-way street. Once trust exists, it's your turn to speak, not to dominate, but to express yourself clearly, respectfully, and authentically. Covey calls this courage balanced with consideration. Courage gives you the strength to express your thoughts honestly. Consideration ensures you do it with respect and awareness of others. When both coexist, conversations transform from debates into dialogues. He illustrates this with the principle of win-win from habit 4. You can't reach mutual benefit if both sides are fighting to be heard. But when one person chooses to understand first, the cycle breaks. Defensiveness melts. The conversation shifts from argument to collaboration. In leadership, this principle is revolutionary. The best leaders don't demand loyalty, they earn it by listening. They make people feel seen. Because when people feel understood, they stop resisting direction and start offering contribution. In families, this habit rebuilds bridges. Many parents, Covey says, try to shape their children's behavior without first understanding their world. But children, like all people, don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And in friendships, partnerships, and love, empathy turns relationships from transactional to transformational. You stop hearing just words, and start hearing needs, fears, hopes. You stop reacting, and start responding. Covey offers a powerful reminder. Seek first to understand doesn't mean agree with everything you hear. It means you listen long enough to understand why someone feels the way they do. Understanding is not endorsement, it's acknowledgement. He encourages a simple daily practice. The next time you find yourself in disagreement, resist the urge to defend. Instead say, "Help me understand your point of view." Then listen, really listen. You'll be amazed at how the tone changes. Because the moment someone feels understood, the need to argue often disappears. Habit 5 is the bridge between hearts, the habit that turns independence into interdependence. The first 3 habits make you effective with yourself. The next 3 make you effective with others. And this one, seeking first to understand, is the cornerstone of every relationship that lasts. Covey writes, "When you listen with empathy, you give someone psychological air." It's what keeps relationships alive, the feeling of being heard, valued, respected. In a noisy world where everyone wants to speak louder, the truly powerful are those who listen deeper. So the next time you're in a conversation, pause. Don't rush to fix, to advise, to impress. Just listen. Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. Because understanding is the doorway to connection. And connection is the foundation of trust. And in the quiet that follows real listening, you'll find not just understanding, but peace. Habit 6, Synergize, Principles of Creative Cooperation. If the first 5 habits were the preparation, the shaping of character, vision, discipline, and understanding, then habit 6 is where everything comes together. It is the art of creation through connection. Stephen Covey calls it synergy, and it's more than just teamwork. It's the miracle that happens when differences collide, not to compete, but to create. Synergy is nature's law of growth. It's the reason 1 + 1 can equal 3, or 10, or 1,000. It's what turns conflict into discovery, and diversity into strength. The world, after all, is built on synergy. The human body, a symphony of organs working in harmony. The forest, a network of species exchanging life. Even the stars, independent, yet connected, forming galaxies of light. Covey says, synergy is what happens when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But to experience it, we must first understand its conditions. Synergy is not automatic. It doesn't grow in the soil of ego, fear, or control. It only blooms when people practice the earlier habits, when they're proactive, guided by purpose, disciplined with priorities, and capable of true empathy. Because synergy requires vulnerability, the courage to say, "I don't have all the answers." It's born when independent minds meet with mutual respect, when ideas are exchanged without threat, when creativity replaces competition. Covey illustrates this through the lens of relationships, in families, in business, in life. He tells the story of a management team divided over a major decision. Half wanted to move forward with a bold new strategy. The other half feared the risk. The room pulsed with tension, logic clashed with emotion. But instead of forcing a compromise, they paused. They began applying the principle of synergy. Let's listen. Let's not defend. Let's understand. Hours turned into insight. What emerged wasn't a middle ground concession but a third alternative, one neither side had seen before. A creative solution that combined the best of both perspectives. That's synergy, the discovery that beyond your way and my way exists our way. Covey calls it the third alternative. It's what happens when people transcend duality, right or wrong, win or lose, and instead explore possibility. The third alternative doesn't dilute differences, it elevates them. Because synergy isn't sameness, it's difference celebrated. It's diversity leveraged. It's understanding that strength doesn't come from uniformity, but from unity in variety. He reminds us that most people fear differences. They interpret disagreement as threat. But when you seek to understand before being understood, as Habit 5 taught, differences stop being dangerous. They become fertile ground for creation. Covey writes, when you value the differences in others, you see them not as roadblocks, but as opportunities to expand your understanding. In families, synergy turns arguments into conversations and walls into bridges. When parents truly listen to their children, when spouses respect each other's perspectives, when every voice feels valued, harmony becomes possible. It's not about agreement, but alignment, a shared spirit of respect that transforms households into havens. In organizations, synergy sparks innovation. The most revolutionary ideas in history were born not from uniform minds, but from collaboration between contrasting ones: artists and scientists, engineers and dreamers, leaders and listeners. Covey points to companies that thrive not because they avoid conflict, but because they channel it creatively. They encourage open dialogue, celebrate diverse thinking, and trust that the tension of difference can give birth to brilliance. He compares synergy to music. Each instrument alone is distinct: a violin, a drum, a flute, but when they play together with intention, they create harmony. The richness doesn't come from similarity, but from synchronized difference. Yet synergy isn't always grand or loud. Sometimes it's quiet, two people finding understanding after years of miscommunication, a team moving in rhythm, a friendship deepening through honesty. It's not the absence of friction, it's the transformation of friction into flow. Covey warns, though, that synergy demands humility. You cannot experience it if you enter every situation trying to win, to control, to prove. True synergy begins when you approach others with curiosity instead of judgment, when you trade certainty for openness. He gives a simple formula: trust plus cooperation equals creativity. When trust is high, communication is open, and creativity thrives. But when trust is low, people hide, defend, and resist. The environment becomes reactive instead of generative. That's why the earlier habits, integrity, empathy, proactive choice, are essential foundations. They prepare you to synergize without fear. Covey challenges us to live synergy as a daily practice, to seek third alternatives in conflict, to invite diversity in decision-making, to listen for the music that difference can make. He tells us, if two people have the same opinion, one is unnecessary. The point of connection isn't agreement, it's growth. Imagine applying that to your life. In your family, instead of arguing to win, you explore to learn. In your work, instead of silencing difference, you harness it. In your friendships, instead of debating who's right, you seek what's true together. That's the essence of Habit 6, the courage to believe that the world doesn't need more conformity, it needs more cooperation. When people practice synergy, something sacred happens. Fear turns into creativity. Isolation turns into community. Competition turns into contribution. And the world becomes just a little more whole. Covey ends this habit with a gentle reminder: synergy isn't something you do, it's something you allow. It flows naturally when trust, respect, and purpose align. It's the reward for practicing the first 5 habits, the fruit of living with principle, vision, empathy, and courage. Because in the end, synergy isn't about agreement, it's about creation. It's the melody of human potential, played in harmony. And when people come together in that spirit, listening, learning, building, what they create is greater than anything they could have achieved alone. Habit 7. Sharpen the Saw. Principles of Balanced Self-Renewal. If the first 6 habits were about forging your character, vision, relationships, and creative power, Habit 7 is about sustaining it, preserving the instrument that is you. Stephen Covey calls it Sharpen the Saw, the disciplined, conscious, and joyful practice of self-renewal. Imagine a woodcutter, swinging his saw all day. At first, the cut is clean and fast. But hours pass, teeth dull, effort doubles, and progress slows. Some would push harder, ignoring the tool's degradation. Others, wiser, pause to sharpen the blade, restoring its effectiveness, making the work lighter, more precise. Sharpening the saw is exactly this: maintaining your greatest instrument, your body, mind, heart, and spirit, so you can continue to grow, serve, and create. Covey emphasizes 4 dimensions of renewal: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Neglect any, and the saw dulls. Nurture each, and your life gains clarity, energy, and purpose. Physically, it's simple yet profound: exercise, nutrition, rest. Covey paints the picture of people rushing through life, exhausted, wondering why they feel empty despite achievements. The remedy isn't more toil, it's tending to the body that carries you through every challenge. Like the athlete who trains daily, or the traveler who rests before a climb, Physical renewal ensures you can meet life's demands with vigor rather than fatigue. Mentally, it's curiosity and growth. Reading, learning, writing, and engaging ideas keep the mind sharp. Covey reminds us that the human mind is like fertile soil. The seeds you plant grow into perspectives, decisions, and innovations. Neglecting mental exercise is like leaving soil barren. Progress slows, creativity falters. When we feed the mind, we expand the realm of what's possible. Emotionally and socially, self-renewal is about relationships. Covey calls this nurturing the heart. Connection, empathy, laughter, and reflection replenish our emotional reservoirs. Without it, stress festers, patience erodes, and conflicts magnify. Think of the parent who listens fully to a child after a long day, or the friend who shares a heartfelt conversation. These moments restore us. Emotional renewal ensures our interactions are not reactive, but generative. Spiritually, renewal comes from reflection, meditation, service, or connecting to something greater than yourself. Covey doesn't prescribe one path. He emphasizes sincerity. Spiritual practice centers you, clarifies purpose, and aligns daily action with enduring values. It's the inner compass that guides all other dimensions, the quiet strength beneath the visible effort. Habit 7 is not indulgence, it's investment. The world does not stop because we pause to renew. On the contrary, renewal multiplies our effectiveness. The sharpened saw allows us to work smarter, love deeper, lead better, and create more fully. Covey shares stories of leaders, parents, and creators who understood this. A CEO, exhausted from relentless meetings, began dedicating 1 hour each day to reading and reflection. Within months, not only did her decision-making improve, but her team noticed her renewed energy. A father, once impatient after long workdays, committed to a nightly walk with his children, listening, laughing, connecting. The saw was sharpened, and his relationships flourished. He warns against imbalance. Overemphasis on one dimension at the expense of others dulls the blade. Mental growth without physical care leads to burnout. Spiritual practice without emotional attention fosters detachment. Physical vitality without mental challenge breeds stagnation. The art of Habit 7 is balance, a four-sided saw, each edge sharp, each dimension aligned. Sharpening the saw is also rhythmic. Covey stresses consistency over intensity. Small, daily habits compound: meditation, journaling, exercise, reading, meaningful conversation. Each stroke of effort adds to the cumulative edge. It's not a single moment of transformation, but a lifetime of renewal. And here's the subtle magic: as you renew yourself, you naturally elevate others. A rested parent, a curious leader, a compassionate friend, their influence multiplies. Sharpening your saw is not selfish, it's foundational generosity. You become capable of giving more without losing yourself. Covey concludes that Habit 7 is the crown of the habits, yet also its enabler. All previous habits, proactivity, vision, prioritization, empathy, cooperation, and synergy, rely on a saw that is keen, balanced, and alive. Without self-renewal, even the strongest character falters. With it, you thrive. So picture your life as a vast forest, each habit a tree growing tall. Sharpen the saw, and the entire forest flourishes, roots deep, branches wide, leaves vibrant. Energy returns. Creativity sparks. Relationships deepen. Purpose crystallizes. The world is richer, simply because you are well tended. Sharpening the saw is a daily act of courage, care, and consciousness. It is the rhythm that sustains achievement and joy. It is the quiet, profound principle that ensures we can keep swinging, keep creating, keep loving, without wearing ourselves down. Because in the end, Habit 7 reminds us, a dull saw may cut, but a sharp saw transforms. And a life renewed transforms everything it touches. Conclusion: the journey of a principle-centered life. As the final notes of our journey through the 7 habits linger, it's time to step back and reflect, to see the patterns, the growth, and the subtle transformations that have been quietly unfolding. The path through proactivity, vision, prioritization, empathy, cooperation, creative synergy, and self-renewal is not a checklist. It's a journey, a lifelong practice of becoming the person you were meant to be. Covey calls it living a principle-centered life, a life grounded not in circumstance, opinion, or fleeting moods, but in timeless truths that guide your choices, your relationships, and your actions. Think back on Habit 1, being proactive. It was the call to recognize your freedom to choose, to step out from the reactive currents of life, and to take responsibility for your own destiny. It was the realization that growth begins not with the world changing, but with you. Habit 2, beginning with the end in mind, painted your vision, a lighthouse on the shore, guiding decisions, priorities, and the very shape of your days. Habit 3, putting first things first, taught you that vision without discipline is just a dream, and that effectiveness is born from choices aligned with your deepest values. Then came Habit 4, thinking win-win, showing that success need not come at the expense of others, that abundance exists when integrity meets generosity. Habit 5, seeking first to understand, then to be understood, illuminated the transformative power of empathy, listening not to reply, but to truly connect. Habit 6, Synergy, revealed the creative miracle that occurs when differences collide, not in conflict, but in collaboration, creating solutions beyond imagination. And Habit 7, Sharpening the Saw, reminded us that the greatest investment is in ourselves, our bodies, minds, hearts, and spirits, for only a renewed self can continue to grow, give, and lead. Through these 7 pillars, Covey's wisdom weaves a simple truth: lasting change begins within, guided by principles, expressed through habits, and sustained through balance. Life is not about perfection, it is about continual growth. Each choice, each conversation, each pause to reflect or renew, is a stroke of the saw, shaping your character, your relationships, and your contribution to the world. The beauty of this framework lies in its universality. It does not demand a specific circumstance or privilege. It invites anyone willing to reflect, to learn, and to act with purpose. It is both gentle and profound. The small daily decisions, the intentional moments of courage and kindness, accumulate into a life of meaning. Covey reminds us that growth is never finished. Life is an ongoing experiment, a living canvas. The habits are tools, not trophies. They are the melody, not the applause. They teach us patience, resilience, and humility, the realization that the journey itself, more than any destination, is where transformation occurs. And so, as you close this audiobook, carry these insights with you not as rules to follow, but as companions to guide your choices. Be proactive, own your power to act. Begin with the end in mind, let vision light your path. Put first things first, live your priorities. Think win-win, seek mutual benefit. Seek first to understand, embrace empathy. Synergize, create through connection. Sharpen the saw, renew yourself, always. Reflect. Apply. Adapt. Return. These habits are not a destination but a compass, pointing toward growth, contribution, and fulfillment. And as you practice them, your life becomes not just effective, but resonant. A life in harmony with principles that endure, a life that inspires, a life that transforms not only you but the world around you. In the end, Covey's greatest gift is perspective, that living a principle-centered life is not about striving to be perfect, but about striving to be present, intentional, and courageous. It is a journey of self-mastery, connection, and renewal, a journey without end, yet rich with meaning at every step. Step forward. Practice the habits. Sharpen your saw. And in doing so, discover the extraordinary potential of a life lived intentionally, a life lived with principle, a life fully yours. Because the truest measure of growth is not what you achieve, but who you become, and who you choose to help others become along the way.